Hello you lovely lot, and welcome to the beautiful Partridge Lakes on probably my favourite lake on this complex, and probably in the oldest, widest world ever, the Gold Lake, where we are going to be going through waggler fishing today for all you lot. Now, it's nothing that we've not really shown before, because you know how much I like to get my waggler out, folks. Absolutely adore it. Now, setup wise, couldn't be easier, but what I want to go through with you is talk you through plumbing up wise first and foremost, but then choosing the correct style of waggler, because there's loads of different ones out there, but we is keeping it nice and simple for you. So first things first, setup wise, as always for me folks, 13-foot rods, nice light rods, 3000-ish size reels, 0.16 lines. I said there's nothing new that we haven't done before on these kind of setups, but it's this business here that we want to get across. Yeah, insert wagglers. This setup here stays exactly the same. The pellet waggler, the Stops pellet waggler kit I've got on, yeah, with a little swivel on there so I can change the floats in an instant. But this is what I mean about like the inserts, which is really sort of like reading them bites for you rather than fishing a straight float, which we'll go through in a sec. And then obviously coming down the rig, dead simple. A little bit different today in that there's so many small fish there. I've gone slightly heavier droppers. We've got number 9 Stots on instead of number 10s, and as always our nice long 10-inch hook length to a size 16 hook. So first thing I want to do is show you how we go about plumbing up. So get away from thinking just grab a big plummet on handy and chuck it in. You cannot do that with waggler fishing. What you've got to do is get a large shot out, so like an SSG, open the split up, Richard zooming in there, and then literally all we're going to do, put the hook into there, clamp that down, and then we're just going to go in, plumb it up, and I'll show you what we're looking for. So let's go and do that right now. Right then, you lovely lot. So little babby plummet, it's not a plummet, is it? It's a G is on the hook. Let's go and let's go and find out the right depth. So first thing to consider is where you're casting. Now, what I've got in front of me is lovely dark water. I've got a little bit of babby shade of sort of like white water to my left. I don't want to be casting into that because there's not enough of it. Basically, how I'm going to be feeding lots and lots, folks, is casters. Now, these casters are going to be going over a bit of an area which does not bother me for this style of fishing one bit. It's all about getting bites, folks. This style of waggler fishing, all about getting bites. Not interested in putting ground bait in, fishing over it, targeting the bigger fish. I just want to be getting bites. So whatever comes along, I am happy with. So I've chosen a bigger bit of dark water so I can see me float basically all the time. I have got a marker in the right opposite me. I've got a pine tree. Well, it's a pine tree. It's a car at the minute, folks, but if the car goes, I've got something behind it. So first things first, nice long drop on your rod, and I'm just going to lightly just cast it out and just feather that float down. Now, make sure you let loads and loads of slack line out. It's going to take sort of like 4 or 5 seconds for your float to come round, because obviously we feathered it out, for your float to come round from when the SSG hits the bottom for your float to go straight. Obviously we can't see our float, so we know we're off the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is put that float up 4 inches, and just to see where we are. You can be so accurate when you're plumbing up, folks. It's so good. I say you don't want to be putting a big, horrible, heavy, spladooshy plummet on. Always go with an SSG. So 4 inches, yeah. So that first rubber stop gets slid up, and then the rest of it. So all I've got on there is some rubber stops and a couple of number 8 Stots underneath the float, and then we'll go to cast it in again. As I said, I'm not overly bothered about, you know, if I'm right on the exact area, there or thereabouts. Well, I don't think we're too far away there. And again, let loads of slack line out, put it up 4 inches. Can we see it? I'd expect to see it now once it's started to, well, you can just about, I don't know if Richard, he zoomed in on that, Rich. I can just about see the tiny bristle on that, which tells me that obviously that line is really tight. So it's basically proper dead depth how we're plumbing up there. So what I'm going to do now is put it up another couple of inches, and we're just going to get a little bit more bristle showing there, because you always want to make sure you're slightly over depth, folks. Yeah, I'm not interested in fishing, you know, sort of up in the water. I want to ultimately make sure that I can get down to the bottom, where a lot of sort of like the bigger fish will be when it's colder. So just a couple of inches on that, and what I'm looking for now is that bristle should stick out that little bit higher, which tells me that I am obviously more over depth. So again, I'm just going to cast in that same area, bring that back, feather it down. So what I'm doing with my finger, folks, yeah, so I'm watching that float through the air. So you see how much more bristle is out there now, yeah? I'm watching that float through the air and I'm feathering it just before that float hits the water. And what I mean by feathering is completely stopping the line with my finger on the spool of the spool of the reel. So important that we're doing that, folks, and not using a line clip, because some of the fish that you're likely to encounter on these kind of venues, as soon as you hook into them, they'll like tear off. You know, it's still mild, even though it's a few days into November, it's still blooming mild, and you know, the carp are so active still, folks. So that's our plumbing up done. We know for a fact that we're 2 inches over depth, yeah? The one before this cast brought it right up nice and tight. Just see how bristle. I put 2 inches on that, so we're 2 inches over depth, which for me, with how this lake is, it's calm, perfect. If we had a bit of undertow on, you know, it was really blowing a gale, I'd go 4, 6, 7, 8 inches over depth. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. You can go as much as you want over depth. So next thing is hook bait. Now, as a rule, I pretty much exclusively always use double maggot. Because I'm likely to encounter a lot of sort of small fish. You know, they could be attacking the bait through the water. We'll be seeing the bites obviously on our float, but if we miss a few, like the little tiny babby ones, they might nick a maggot. There's going to be a maggot left on you by the time you get to the bottom. Now, with a pole, you know, obviously we've been through this loads and loads of times. I will hook the maggots. They'll always be through the point, but I won't hook them as finely as what I'll do on a pole. Yeah, I'll hook them just probably like 2, maybe 3 mil into the maggot, so that I'm not sort of striking them off, if you like, so they are going to stay on. And then if I do miss a bite, I'm going to wind it back nice and quick and cast out again, so I'm in the same spot every time. Now, I'm not interested in obviously feeding first, casting into it. I'm just literally just going to give it a cast straight away, feather that float down so you can see I've got a nice tight line, and I'm fully expecting a bite straight away, folks. Even though I'm not, there you go. See what I mean? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Oh, it's fell off, it fell off. But it just shows you how quick these fish will have it. Even though we've not fed anything, I'm going to put some bait in actually. Even though we've not fed anything, the fish are just actively waiting. So you can see the spread that I'm getting on them casters. That is the beauty of this style of fishing. I'm not bothered about it whatsoever. The maggots still good to go. Could have been foul up that one, folks. The maggot's still good to go. So again, nice little cast. Feather that down so your bait is going past your float. I'm not sinking my line, folks. There's no need to sink your line. No need. The only time I'd sink my line would be when I'm waiting for a bite and I've got a bit of a crosswind. Because obviously if you didn't, then you're just going to have a big bow in your line. All I'm going to do, just make sure I've got a nice straight line to that. Just give it a bit of a twitch every now and again. I'm going to go feed again around that float. I can't believe we had that bite straight away then. There we go. We had a little dink then. Just going to leave that, let that develop a little bit more. Now, to encourage the fish, what I will do, and obviously, one, it encourages the fish. Two, it just gives it that little bit of attraction, is a little tiny flick like that, just to make sure that my line's lovely and straight to the float. Just give it a little bit of a flick. And what that does, it tells you that you're nice and straight to your float, but it's just bringing that hook bait slightly off the bottom. Remember, we've got number 9 stots on today, folks, so we're getting through them fish pretty quickly to get down to the bottom. If it was more sort of fish feeding up in the water, then I'd go for like number 10s. But for how it is today, I want to try and bypass a lot of these like tiny fish and get down to the bottom where the bigger fish are going to be. You know, the bigger skimmers, bream, F1s, carp. Let's give that another bit of a flick then. And there's no right and wrong with leaving it either. You know, obviously you saw how quickly we got that one through the water, so it might be I need to cast every 30 seconds to a minute. But the first cast, I'm going to leave it sort of up to sort of 3, 4, 5 minutes. As long as it's staying in that area where we're putting the bait in, it's not going to bother me whatsoever. That's what it's all about. Get a bit more bait in. That's going to have a bit of a bigger spread, that one, so I'm going to put another one in. I said, don't let it bother you whatsoever. That's the beauty of this style of fishing. You know, you can cast a few foot to the left, a few foot to the right, a little bit past it, a little bit this side of it. Doesn't matter. When you're looking to get a lot of fish in your peg and build your swim up, go on, the carps. Fishing too far out, folks, aren't they? When you're looking to get a lot of fish in your peg and build it up, it certainly pays to feed around it. So we get a little bit of a dink then. Ease on. That might be a skimmer, that, folks, so keep that rod nice and low when you're playing them. So you saw we left that, what, a couple of minutes on it, 90 seconds to a couple of minutes. Probably a little babby skimmer. It's lovely, that. That's what I want. I don't want to be, well, I don't want to be striking at them little babby fish through the water. I want sort of like decentish fish like these. A lovely day on them. Yeah, nice little babby skimmers. So at this stage here, because I always use back wind, folks, when I've upped my fish, take the back wind off, make sure that is tucked under your leg so everything's nice and tight so you can't tangle. Unhook the fish, beautiful skimmery bobs, get him in the net, and then obviously any slimy fish, folks, make sure you get rid of all this. But it's this business here, making sure everything's nice and tight and it can't possibly tangle. And then put fresh bait on again. Just give them a little bit of a, I'm just rolling them a little bit on my leg, folks, just to stun them a little bit. Because what can happen when you're using live maggots, certainly 2 live maggots, when you're winding back, if you've not got a fish on, they can spin up your hook length. So it does pay to just stun them a little bit or just have some dead maggots. So again, nice long drop, rod tip to your float, give it a swing out first, and it's just a nice light cast, feather that down. Yep, nice tight line, and again we'll go to feed again. Feed on that float. There we go. So you see how some have gone past it, some have gone around the float, this side of it, don't let it bother you. A little dink down on the drop, there we go, we're in again. So that's 2 we've had through the water. This is only a little babby one, this one. But it just shows you we've had a bite every single cast. Yeah, little babby roach. If I was catching them a lot, them little roach, and you know they weren't getting any bigger, I'd probably go for little tiny balls of ground bait and that. But you know, it's one of them. Obviously, this style of a waggler fishing, the loose feed, it's just all about going out and just getting bites. I think that's why I love it so much, especially on colder days. The colder it gets, the better it is, because you're always active. It's just keeping you warm. It's so good, folks. So I'm not going to feed this time. I'm going to feather that in. I'm just going to leave it and see what happens. So I didn't feed for it. It must have been 10 or 15 minutes. So that first one, that bigger one we had through the water, I literally didn't feed at all. I'm just going to leave this one because obviously that loose feed's attracting them smaller fish. I want to see if we can get a little bit bigger fish on the bottom. Whoa. Don't think that was a line or anything like that, folks. See, that's what I mean about winding it back quick. Yeah, my hook length, it's not spinning up. If them maggots were live, 100% that hook length would have spun up. So just give them a little bit of a stun. Feather that in. Yes, you see we're keeping a nice tight line every time to it. If we did have a bad crosswind, then that is when I would overcast by a couple of metres, you know, so give it a bit more force. So these are little babby fish, these through the water. Yeah, give it a little bit more force, sink your rod under the water and give it a big whip up so you're sinking that line, but we don't need to at the minute. There we go. I'm going to feed this time. It's all about just getting into a rhythm. So it's all about getting into a rhythm, making sure you're casting, using that feathering technique that I've talked about with your finger rather than using a line clip. You know, if you're not confident with you know, stopping it with your hands, then obviously use a line clip. That's what it's there for. But just get used to it with your hands, feathering the float down. It's so much easier. That's dotted that little bit low then. Whoa, someone had that then. Little tiny dink. So I think some of these are just little tiny fish at the minute. I'm just going to change that hook bait again. We had one burgled then. Give them a little bit of a stun. It's quite often the case though, the first sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, you will get, he's gone a bit to the left him. Just bring him around a little bit. The first sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, you will get, you know, smaller fish. See, he's on straight away, little babby one. And then generally, once they've had the fill, you know, because you can feed them off, obviously the way we're feeding, that's when you can catch the bigger fish. But for me, it's, as I say, it's just all about getting bites. It's just a superb way of fishing. Make sure obviously we're changing that bait every time. But certainly with how these little fish are now, what I don't want to be doing, he's gone a bit left as well. What I don't want to be doing is feeding first and then casting into it, because obviously you're going to attract them fish into your swim quick, then obviously you're casting over it, then you're going to get a lot of these little fish. It might be right later on, you know, sort of if the F1s and that move in, the big F1s, they could move in, or whatever, if you're riding a venue, big skimmers, hybrids, anything like that. It might be that you need to feed first and cast into it. But at the minute, it's just a case of fishing through them little babby fish. But we're getting bites, folks, aren't we? You know what I mean? That's what it's all about, getting them bites. Here we go then, folks. A bit better. Just shows you though, obviously, you know what I mean? Just catching, keeping warm, getting bites. That's what it's all about, you lovely lot. And eventually, you know, just persevere with it. You get rewarded with bigger fish. It's not a massive one, but a little better skimmer. That's what we want. Lovely poppadom. So it's fish like that, obviously, you know, match conditions that are proper weight builders. Oh, he's proper nailed it, he has. Yeah, proper weight builders, these match conditions, you know what I mean? Look at them beauties. Beautiful skimmers. But I said there's so many venues that like this where you can just go and have a proper day's fishing, be it pleasure fishing, or let me just put that over there, pleasure fishing, or incorporate into your matches as well. Obviously, you know, we've done a few well, certainly I've done a few matches on traditional Waggler. It's just a brilliant way of fishing. You don't have to worry too much about the accuracy, get them fish over a big area, and then obviously when the bigger fish come in, they're not sort of spooking themselves, if you like, you know what I mean, because they're not all on top of themselves. And yeah, you'll catch them through the water. The deeper it is, the better it is. Just bear in mind, obviously, plumbing up wise, make sure it's with an SSG, go a couple of inches to start with, and then judge what's happening with the wind. Float wise, you must use insert float, so you've seen them little dinky bites. And shotting wise, depends. Obviously, I've gone to number 9 today because I wanted to get down to the bottom to try and get the bigger fish, but obviously looking at it, it'd probably been better with number 10s because there's so many fish through the water still, simply because of the conditions. It's so mild. But one thing's for certain, folks, get out there, give the Waggler a try, and you'll have the best days fishing ever in the whole wide world. Go on, folks, get on it.